Hello, everyone. Let me stop the recording on the computer. So good to see everybody here. Welcome, welcome. Just stop the perfect. How is everyone? I know some of you might still be popping on, and some of you are like in transit doing stuff. I'm just super, super happy that you're here in the capacity that you are. I have notes. I am going to do it a little bit different than I usually do, but I do have my notes here. So let's see. I do so much better with my notes. Okay, so I am very excited for today's topic. 2027, the new era and the future human. I remember 7 years ago picking up Ra's book, and that's one of the first. You got it here with me. And it's one of the first things that I learned at the very beginning was our human history in terms of like the amount of centers that we have and um, energetically speaking, and how that impacts us physiologically, and the role of the cosmos too. They have to, and so the energetics, which is how many centers we have, which I'll get to, and then the cosmos and how that impacts our actual physiology, which is super mind-blowing and incredible. I'm going to unpack that. And because this book is super thick and comes from a fellow 5-1, Ra Uru Hu, the founder of Human Design, was a 5-1 profile, which all that means is that he was really charged with the gift of being able to teach and share very helpful information. So he downloaded this human design system, was downloaded to him, and then he was then given this task of spreading it and sharing it. And so he, in true 5-1 style, just shared the information. So this is a very thick book. And so I remember first reading it and being fascinated by the beginnings in our human history and where we're going. But because there was so much more other fascinating aspects to human design, I really dove deeper into that and got really lost in reading charts for people almost right away, and then doing it professionally. And now it's 2027 felt so far away. 7 years ago, I mean, it was far away. Now it's like 2 years away. And I had this real, true, felt sense of now is the time. There was this urgency to start sharing about this topic. It almost, to me, felt like it came out of nowhere, but there was this sense of, hey, there's this like aspect of human design, the reason why it's here, the reason why we're drawn to it, and all of those other things. It's because of what's coming in 2027 and beyond. And this information really felt this, that I had this urgency to start sharing. And then I found Richard Rudd, who is the founder of Gene Keys. He was a contemporary of Ra Uru Hu, so they were really close friends together. Not to veer off on that side topic, but he started sharing about the year 2027. And Jenna Zoe, one of my teachers, she started sharing about this a couple years ago. And so there has been like growing traction in this field, but that just shows me that this information really does want to be shared. And it is the time, like the time is now to start really learning and preparing. And so if you're here, okay, I'm not going to get too ahead of myself, but yeah, so the role that human design plays, this information now versus before or later. So the reason why human design is here now and why it came 35 years ago versus way before that or even later, there's a very significant part to that, which I will totally get to. But yes, I was so fascinated then, and it continued. And there is this sense of a healthy balance, like a calm nervous system urgency to share this information. So thank you for being here. This is definitely, if you're here, you're interacting with this information for a really big reason, and we'll also explore that in a little bit too. But if you're completely new to me, because I know some of you are here completely new, whether you're on the call or watching the replay, I am Ilona Barnhart. I'm a 5/1 sacral manifesting generator in human design speak. And just like Ra Uruhu, who also is a 5/1, but he was a manifester, but he was a 5/1. So he also was here to share and teach this very fascinating, helpful information. So for me as a manifesting generator, the information that I gravitate to, that I find fascinating, that I find gives me energy, I'm here to share, which is not a bad call, you know what I mean? But it can be like, at least Rauruhu and everybody else has done such a beautiful, the people that have come before have done such a beautiful way of laying the foundation, because it's not this completely epically, radically new information. It is for some people, but human design, like people have heard, most people that are interacting with it now have heard something about it. They maybe are familiar with their energy type. And as 2027 comes closer, we're going to start hearing potentially even more information about what Ra'uruhu shares with people about it. So, okay, but I continue to find human design in itself super helpful and intriguing and incredibly practical. Everything reflecting as I was preparing for our this talk today, this webinar, I was reflecting on how almost everything in my life, yeah, I guess I would say most recently, a lot of things, let's just say, because I don't know if I could say almost everything, but a lot of things in my life, the way that they are, is a result of me living my design for the last 7-ish years. I live where I live because I responded to moving to California even before I knew what responding was. My boyfriend at the time, who's my husband now, he's like, hey, because he came, it's just such a cool story. But he landed here for a friend's wedding. His G Center fell in love with the space because his G Center is open. Just a little bit of like extra information for, for you all. Fell in love with it. And he's like, hey, do you want to come out here to live and do photography with me? And I had a genuine response, like, yes, it was not like a dream, like for it that it is for some to potentially move or live somewhere. It was a true response. I was like, sure, why not? There was like life, and now I'm obsessed living here and I love it. But my spiritual awakening and my growth, I really owe to this magical space. And could that have happened somewhere else? Potentially, but the environment here was very conducive for me to really start this and continue on. And I wonder how, it's a whole separate conversation, but it was that initial response to something, to the move, which was really big for me, to leave everything I've known, right? Moving is big. And then from there on, when I found human design, I started to, and when I decided to radically start living it, because I started to share it and read charts in a bigger way. So that meant that I needed to really step up in a way too, and like really radically start playing, experimenting with this information. If I was going to be in the space of sharing it with people and guiding people to do it too, like it kind of like test it out, right? Do it for myself. And I've used it to, when it came to becoming a parent, I really, human design really helped me get into the driver's seat of my life instead of going with the flow, with the, like just moving with like how things are going and all that stuff. I really started to get behind the wheel of my own life in a lot of ways and take full responsibility and be empowered to make decisions that were aligned because of my sacral authority. So responding, strategy and authority, following it really radically. I live in the house that I live right now because of responding, because I was intentionally following my design, becoming a parent, making decisions in my business are all informed by my design, as well as my day-to-day stuff, as well as the way that I parent, the kind of person I am, like the things that I talk about. A lot of it is filtered through. It's not that I necessarily always, there's no such thing as perfect. It is an experiment. So not that I always do the things that I'm yes to, or I don't ever do anything I don't want to do. It's not the case at all. It's just that I'm very hyper aware, and everything does get filtered through that first. I'm very aware of like when I'm actually fully aligned in something and when I'm not, and why I'm potentially choosing to do that, which has completely transformed my life. It's been so radically satisfying and harmonious that it continues to fuel me to share this information even more. And so I find, and I found too, that this very practical information has a lot to say about 2027. And so now I'm in this space that I want to even share this information further, because the more that I found that I know, the more empowered I am with that knowledge. It helps me to prepare and make different decisions. And it really supports me in a way that I haven't had before. So before I was going with the flow, but there was so much anxiety in my life. Some anxiety I was aware of, and a lot of it that I was not aware of. But my story of anxiety is like a story for a whole nother webinar in of itself. But um, I am very much obsessed with how practical and helpful human design is. And that's why I am sharing more. So this is why I love this information and why I share it. So a big thank you to everyone on live. Big thank you to everybody watching the replay. I don't think you fully realize how monumental it is for you to show up. Like you showing up, how big that really truly is. Even if you don't fully understand mentally why you showed up or what exactly made you like be here. Maybe you're totally curious about the topic, right? Totally. Like a lot of people that signed up are curious about the topic, of course. And yet, if you're around and you've been around in this world and human design is something that you're curious about, it's because there is a significant part or role that you're here to play in this paradigm shift at this time. So even if the role, which I'll get to later, I have notes about this for later, but the role doesn't have to be grandiose for it to be impactful and for you to do the part that you inevitably are here to contribute. Yes, okay. So speaking of this paradigm shift, 2027, the new era. Okay, astrologically speaking, we're moving from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age. And you may have heard stuff about this from different descriptions of it. So wait, let me see. Someone trying to, oh no, we're all here. Okay. The biggest, in terms of the new era, we're moving from the age of the guru, of the expert, of the influencer, celebrity culture, essentially outside influence telling us what to wear, what to eat, what kind of, like, what is happiness, like what would make us happy, the how, the accolades, the luxuries, like success. We had that defined for us potentially, and not sold, but it was something that potentially worked before. It was something like, hey, here's something you can work towards. It was a part of the era before. It's like, I've done this and this brought me this sense of feeling, accomplishment, of success, and I will teach you potentially how, or I'll give you this blueprint, yada, yada, yada type of thing, right? And the Aquarian age, in terms of like human design perspective, is starting to gather the information about who you actually really are from the intelligence that lives inside of you. So no longer looking at the outside to define success, happiness for you, but really looking within. And human design is this incredible tool because it says, here's how you do it. Here are your mechanics. Here's this incredible insight that you get to potentially now start to play with and experiment with and see for yourself. And so instead of, and we could still potentially look and maybe we get mesmerized. And for manifesting generators and generators, we are constantly responding to the environment outside of us. And that has, but just like if you see someone or something and you're like gravitating towards it, it's not necessarily the first thing at a glance, right? It's like getting down to the nectar of what is it that this person or this thing represents at the core that you're potentially having a response to. But life is this shift in this era is that life is outside perspective, this guru, this person that knows more, this person that's this expert, and starting to, it's almost like growing up in a lot of ways, but becoming your own, you may have heard this, becoming your own guru, your own healer, your own authority, essentially, being the last final word on all of these things. And obviously being sensible when it comes to medical things, financial things like that. I mean, it just depends on how radical you want to get. But the bigger the stronger your trust muscle gets, the more radical you might actually become with your experiment. And that's totally up for you to play with. But essentially, no one knows more than you anymore. When it comes to what will make you happy or what will get you the life that will feel the most fulfilling or satiating, right? There are people that have their lanes of genius that will continue sharing helpful information that obviously are potentially like healers or, you know, like financial experts and things like that, that you can get, you know, like you're not going to like potentially all of a sudden know everything about crypto if you want to invest in that. You know what I mean? Like you might want to get somebody in that field, but at the same time, not having someone, but finding that person, if you are dealing with an expert or someone in their lane of genius, as someone of like equal to you, like you two are equals sharing and exchanging energy or information, essentially, right? There's an exchange that's happening even right now. So but we're all equals, right? This like idea of somebody knowing more about what you're here to do is just being really crumbling down and becoming your own experts, like the information the universe is here. And human design says that, well, Nietzsche said this essentially, that there's more intelligence in your body than there will ever be in the mind. And human design is like, well, this is how you tap into it, right? So depending on your energy type, you're going to have a different part of your body that, or a different strategy to like navigate life with. And then there's a different body part of yours. It could be the emotions that guide your decision making. It could be your gut. It could be your spleen, your ego, your G center, your ajna, or if you are a reflector, it will be the environment over time revealing to you your next step. So really learning and getting very familiar and intimate with your specific intuitive connectedness to life itself is where we're heading to. And these are things that have already been happening, but now the speed is going to rev up even further. Okay, so that's astrologically Piscean age, the guru, the expert that you came to and you looked up to, and they gave you like they gave you like a remedy and then you followed it and it worked or it didn't, whatever. And now it's more of like, we all have something to contribute. We all recognize our own greatness and our own responsibility with the way that life is what we're creating. We're taking responsibility for what we see around us. That's a huge like Aquarian age thing of like, how can I use everything around me, my friends, my family, situations, to reflect back to me where I can take fuller responsibility and co-create. How can I that's a conversation for like a deeper, another thing too, though, but using your strategy and authority will continue to guide you in a way that you will continue to find synchronicities. You'll be at the right place at the right time. Opportunities will present. There will be flow and harmony, even if it doesn't make sense in the mind, which is like, I'm a total like example of that. And I just can't wait to share even more on this, like in another topic, in another way, but like, it doesn't make sense in the mind, but oh man, this life is just it's magic in a lot of ways. Okay, so when it comes to speaking, let's see. Okay, also looked like, oh yes, this is another big thing about the Piscean age. That's changing, is that there were people at the top, the 1%ers, the billionaires, like the billionaire consciousness. Meaning that there were people that were really, they got really good at extracting materials, resources, power, and leaving others not behind. I have this theory that nobody did that on purpose necessarily. It became the snowball effect of like getting more, got more, now I'm in this position. And so it's like now you're just like revving it up. Because I do believe that everybody, okay, it's like a phone. Let me go back up. When it comes to billionaire consciousness and people that have a lot and they are like on top and they feel so separate, this is also being very much questioned, because now we're moving into the space, because life itself, the environment, is beginning to put a lot of pressure on us to really reconsider how we've been doing that, because that is no longer serving people, the planet, etc. This is going to get really deep. it's going to get even deeper when we get to the future human. Okay, so stay with me. Let me know if this is landing, if you're tracking. Okay, yeah. So Piscean age, the expert, the billionaire on top, and other people at the bottom. This is the disparity between wealth and people. It is in a lot of ways getting wider, and then at the same time, there's more possibility. So I see a future where there's going to be more conscious-minded individuals who are meant to work with resources in a way that they circulate that. And so it continues to create wealth in a way that's global and multi-beneficial. It's not this herding of resources that we may have seen in the past. That was a reflection of a wounding, of filling up so that we can like heal in a lot of ways. So that's one way of potentially dealing with resources. And another resource that's very scarcely minded is it's for safety I have, so I'm holding on, but I'm not going to circulate it. I'm not going to have it flow like the current that it's meant to flow. So I'm going to cap myself at a very comfortable level for me, because if I take any chances or if I do things, then that's scary. That's scaring my bottom line. So both things are no longer working, and we're finding to restructure and rebuild a whole new way. And the new way moving forward is individuals who potentially will make stupid amounts or will have stupid amounts of resources coming to them, but they will also be willingly circulating it back, and in a way that will give life back to the earth and other individuals. Like, how are there individuals still that have so much, and yet there's so many catastrophes and things that can be funded and helped, right? With the resources. And so that there's a lot of pressure happening energetically, environmentally, because listen, these billionaires that have been extracting, whether it was what they set out to do or not, and that could be debated, right? And people have their theories about that. I have my own theories, but that's not the purpose of this webinar. But it's just to bring to light that that in itself has to be restructured. And there's a lot of pressure on that, because guess what? What's going to happen to you? Like a billionaire, like you're going to be alone in your bunker with your like family, your, close ones, doing what? Where's the earth? Where's everybody else? You know what I mean? Like, that's not the end goal for anybody, but I don't think people saw that as a ramification, but we're seeing that very clearly that that's what nobody wants that essentially. And so there's yes, we're moving into a space where standing in our own individual greatness is beginning to have the value come back, and there will be this reciprocated, there has to be a new way forward when it comes to resource sharing and things like that. So the environmental pressures are such that Life Earth will come after the billionaires too if they don't change their ways. It's starting to really hit people, the ones that are hurting, and this big question over where does this leave us is being really presented, because yeah, okay. In human design speak, we're moving, so astrologically we're looking at the Piscean and Aquarian age. In human design, we're moving from planning, where there was certain different I Ching gifts, gates that were highlighted for this period of time that were all about building structures and planning civilization. So like planning out the best way to farm, the best way to structure a city and roads, like all of that. And now we're moving into the Sleeping Phoenix, which is it's like another set of 4 gates that are going to be very predominant in this new era, which is all about this massive transformation. So we're moving from planning, structures, foundations, to building on top of those. There will be a restructuring of some of the foundations and structures because they're no longer serving us like they did at the very beginning, because we're moving into a whole new phase. But we're not going to totally disassemble them. We're going to take what worked, and the people that are here to help crumble things, and there's people that are here to rebuild things. They're going to be doing it in a more conscious way so that we can be really set up for success when this transformation in our human evolution is happening. So the new era is marked by great achievements and advancements. Like it's going to be happening so much quicker, right? AI is here and it's just flying, and that's just one thing. It's one example of what is like to come. So before our kids even make it to the job market, there will be opportunities that we haven't been invented yet, and that's already happening too. Like AI has brought up so many questions, and there was an upheaval with it, and yet now we're learning how to work with it, and it's creating new job sectors, a whole nother language, and this is only going to exponentially like continue onwards. This is already happening in a lot of ways. I will say that the generations that are coming after us, our kids, our grandkids, they do have new nervous systems. They have this ability to hold technology and have the capacity for what's coming that we haven't before. And so it's up to us to energetically continue to up level. And in a lot of ways, that already happens by how you clean up, the more that you align with your design, you're energetically up leveling. And then there's different things that you can do to really speed that up for yourself too energetically. Yes. So you could do that intentionally, and by just engaging with human design and this information, it's already also happening too. But our kids and the generations that are coming, they don't necessarily have to do so much work because they come with the capacity to handle more. So I know a lot of us do worry about our kids in tech, and there's definitely a conversation to be had about that. And it does raise concerns. And at the same time, just like when the book came on and more common people started reading the book, the older generations looking at the younger generations that started reading books, they're like, man, like your posture, remember, like it's like, it's like your posture, or you're losing yourself in like the imaginary worlds, and you're never going to amount to anything because you're like, you got your nose stuck in the book. Like there was so much rhetoric around that sounds awfully familiar to what we might have around tech. And like, trust me, like my kiddo, like not, we have like 20 minutes once a week. I mean, she's only like 2 and something, but didn't have any tech for the first like year and a half. And I was very intentional about that, even though I also know that she is she was born with the capacity to handle like the 5G, to handle the technology that's coming, to understand it in a way that just baffles me. For someone who doesn't even look at the phone or have it, she knows that the red button with the or the red button with the little arrow is play, and she knows how to look for like pictures. Like it's crazy. Like I give her a minute on my phone. I don't even know how she gets it. And it's like she's like type, it's just wild. But it is just really cool to see, because it just shows me that as the little guru that she is for me, that there's a relationship with technology that I might not understand. Like I am one of those last generations to grow up that and remember what it was like without technology, without social media. Moving forward, that's just not the case anymore. But then also trusting that there is a place for that. And then there's different ways that we can really hold ourselves and continue to upgrade in our nervous systems. But essentially, what I mean about upgrades is being well resourced. So anything and everything that allows you to take a bigger breath in, feel expanded, things that take away like the pressure. So there could be different like breathwork practices, exercises, intentional auric hygiene, energetic releases. All of those things can be very helpful. And there are going to be people who will continue to willingly upgrade. Like, okay, my capacity is this, and I'm choosing to continue to step up radically, whether it's living my design radically, continue to, as scary as it might be, take responsibility for my life. Because I remember when I first started dabbling into human design, and that the first premise really was about becoming your own authority. And I was like, wait, there's nobody in charge. Like being an adult and waiting for this moment to like not have somebody tell me what to do. Because when you're younger, like a lot of times that's you're being told, like you don't have a say in your schedule, like it's being dictated to you. And then all of a sudden, like you grow up, but then you follow somebody, like you follow different sets of orders, societal conditioning and programming. And there was this moment of like, wait, there's nobody in charge? Like, what does that mean for my belief system? And it felt a little disorienting at first. And it took me a minute to really integrate that information and find my footing, and realizing that when there isn't somebody in charge, I'm not pointing the finger to somebody to blame or look for direction, that there is this really deep sourcing from within. And that in itself creates a capacity to then be able to face whatever's presenting in a way that is graceful, humble, and in just total, for lack of a better word, surrender to what is. Just knowing that it's this experience, it's like a blip. It's here and then it's gone. But also just to say that, just to give you that relief about the generations coming, that they already come equipped to handle the technology and what's happening. A lot of us do, it is required that we do update and for the most part, if you're here and you're having this conversation, there has been already some kind of upgrades for you to even hear this information. So, because I could feel people being like, did I upgrade? What does that mean? Energetically, if you're interacting with this information, you are ready for it. You're ready to hear its wisdom and knowledge, and have it do its work in you as you contemplate more on it, as you integrate, and as you continue to like really live out your design. I will say there are people though that might be part of our generation, prior or even older, that are done upgrading. They're done. They, you know, they're here to like enjoy the rest that they have, whether it's, you know, 20, 50, however many years. Not everyone will have the same sort of culling or trajectory at all. And that's completely okay. But recognizing that also then could potentially stir things. It's like, what does that mean for them? It doesn't mean necessarily anything bad. And ultimately, it just, it's almost like another layer of understanding that we all came here with our own authority, essentially, right? So if you are connecting with that and trusting that, then your trust muscle in the rest of how everything is playing out also continues to then strengthen and grow. And then you become a key role player in creating a better future, creating a future that you would prefer to see for yourself and for your kids and moving forward. Yes. Okay. Another little note before we move to the future human on the new era is that some structures are crumbling and while others are rebuilding. We're seeing that happen now. There's a little bit of instability, but the cool thing for me, knowing this, it's like, oh, like if I see a headline or if I see someone saying like, you got to pay attention to this, and it's somebody that I trust, that I am open to receiving information from them. So I'm very, maybe I'll share a little bit more about my process, but I am really guarded with what I do let in, because for me, I am someone who is meant to really focus on the sharing helpful information to move us forward. So it doesn't actually serve me to be the person that's also crumbling down or signaling that this needs to crumble. That's not the role that I came here to play. I'm not here to turn a blind eye either. So I allow from anywhere from 20 to 5% of my energy to go towards the crumbling to that, because for me, the role that I'm playing is holding the role of the way shower of the new, of holding the frequency to the best of my ability, to my human best capability and ability of the greatest, the best case kind of scenario. I've always been like this. Like I wear red colored glasses, and that naivete has helped me in a lot of ways. And there was a little bit of bypassing, or maybe a lot of bypassing that happened in most of my life. And it wasn't until 2016 when my like spiritual awakening really started like unraveling, that I was aware of it. And I took like an active role in that, that started to shift. I started to take accountability and responsibility for my side of the street. I started to clean out my side of the street. And now I could tell, the further I go through my human design and following my authority and strategy, is that I am here to be a way shower of the, show people how good it can be still amidst the freaking chaos that's currently happening. And that might be really hard to hold for some, because there are such atrocities. And like my teacher, Jenna Zoe, and I have only a handful of teachers. That's on purpose too. As a 5-1, it was very important for me to be very clear what information I was letting in and from who. The people that resonated, I'm open to, right? Like I said. And so if somebody that I resonate with and have open to and trust through my authority and my strategy, and they say something like, pay attention to this crumbling, I do. And I look at that and I have it do its work within me to then inspire me to put on a webinar like this. You know what I mean? Or go even deeper. And we're going to go even deeper into this. And I swear, this is like course worthy. And you're here and listening. And it's just, I can't thank you enough for showing up because it takes courage in a lot of ways, because you signed up and who knows what you know what I mean? Like you didn't know, you took a chance. And so that's big. And 7 years ago, I took a chance on a random thing that I found fascinating. And here I am today. My life's completely changed. And I feel on purpose and fulfilled. My head hits the pillow fulfilled every single night I go to bed, which that wasn't always the case before. Okay, but I digress. Okay, as some structures crumble and others are being rebuilt, we all have a place. I alluded to this. So some people will focus on the rebuilding and some people will focus on helping structures crumble, or they will be the ones pointing to what is wrong. They will be the ones who have all the theories, and there's a place for us all. We all play a role. And as we get closer to 2027, some of these structures and things that are happening that need to put the pressure on the people that have been in like positions of total power and resource control. There's pressure being put on all of us. And so, but having, just to retract back, but having this information allows you to anchor yourself into like, okay, like this isn't just total random chaos. There is a purpose within all of this. There's a reason for it all. And this is actually creating the exact environment that's needed for what is to come. And if I can anchor myself into that truth and into my own alignment through my strategy, my authority, then I can trust. And that trust, I will say, grows with time. That trust muscle, that confidence in being exactly where you're being at the right place at the right moment, exactly where you need to be, comes over time, right? That builds with you taking little chances or you growing that trust muscle by experimenting with little things. So then when the big things happen, you don't necessarily totally lose yourself, and you begin to decipher with your strategy and authority what your actual role is. Because some people are here to share information about what is fascinating to them, and some people are fascinated by structures that need the revamp, that need to like crumble. And others, for me, like the Pisces rising in me, is just so fascinated by the spiritual aspect. It's fascinated by the more dreamy, the more ethereal, like that is so in alignment with me. And as a Leo, because I'm a Leo sun and Leo moon, if none of this makes sense to you, that's totally okay. But what I'm saying, that these parts of my personality that I know about, that it really aligns, that I am sharing about how good it can be in the midst of just total despair, and how to really hold on to that, because you're not going to contribute. Jenna Zoe would say, one of my teachers, that you're not really contributing to the overall bringing up the collective if you are fully only like in your sorrow, focusing on the sorrow. And that's a big thing to swallow. It was for me for a while. Perhaps being a non-emotional in human design, it's helped me to veer a little bit more towards the how good it can be aspect, where some other people are here to actually like feel all of that in that way. So just really interesting. But anyway, there's going to be roles that we all play, and the roles that we play too are not necessarily limited to rebuilding or crumbling either, but both are going to be happening. And the closer we get to 2027, the more we're going to see different environmental pressures and structural pressures, meaning crumbles, things coming to the ahead, because there is this ramp up of energy. So HD, I have a note here, HD, human design, is your biggest asset. We no longer have someone else telling us what to do. It will no longer work. So some people might tell you what to do, but it will no longer work for you. So you have to start aligning more and more, especially if you're here right now in this webinar. And it's because you're ready to up level in this way, meaning you're ready to take have a bigger role. You are that main character in your life, right? In life, you are the main character. And so you're here to really step up in that way. That's the up level. Okay, so now we're going to move to the 2027, the future human. A great place to look to for perspective and what we can expect in 2027 and beyond is from the past. And here's what I mean. Human design gives us tremendous insight into our own very nature, but it talks about primarily our aura and the fabric and the way that we connect to the rest of life. It's essentially that kind of science, right? It connects us to the bigger, greater. Is there comments? How does, oh, let me see. There is a comment, Siri. How does the affect an open head crown who benefits from external influences? Oh, that's a great question, Karin. I'll come back to that towards the end, okay? So yeah, definitely feel free to pop in questions. It's a great question. Because there's a, it's very nuanced, the answer, but I love that because I totally get it. Yeah, it's a great question. Okay. Human design gives us, it's this science. But do you see how much gold you're all getting here? I think I often say this, but like truly, this is like a webinar. This is definitely like course material stuff, you know? We might go a little over. I'm notorious for that, but I really, we'll see. Okay. Human design, just to back up a little bit, for anybody that maybe is new or fairly new, is that it gives us an insight into our mechanical nature, which essentially means it's like the sprout. It's like the seed that knows to open up when the environment. So, right, if you have a seed, like an avocado seed on your counter, it will do nothing. It will just sit there. But if you put it into water, right, or into the ground and start feeding it water and nutrients, it will crack open. It will know to crack open and to start to grow. It will know, the seed itself will know how to go from a seed, open the information, and grow into a tree, given the essential, the components. And that's what I mean about mechanics. The seed itself doesn't actually have to think about anything, doesn't consider what kind of tree it is. It just knows that this trigger and then in its environment is then going to turn something on, that turns something else on, that turns this on, that then manifests itself physically in this way. So human design's promises is that if you connect to your mechanics and start to align with them, you are inevitably attaching yourself or connecting to the greater fabric of life itself, so that you, the consciousness that is experiencing you as you, gets to go into backseat mode almost, gets to go into backseat mode and observe this life that you're living as a movie from the perspective of the main character, which is you. So it's essentially saying, get the mind out of the way, because the body, with life itself, knows where you need to go, knows what you need to do. The only thing you got to do is follow your strategy and your authority, which will only get easier and easier for future generations too, as we grow. And you might actually notice this, like I see this in my daughter, and it might be because I honor certain things of her, but a lot of us who are cycle breakers, who've chosen to do that to some degree, who've chosen to heal, to be conscious, to like, you know, you potentially are very spiritual, you're here and you've gone through your own spiritual awakening to some degree. Even if you don't have that wording, I didn't have that wording either, or didn't identify with that for a while. But that's essentially what happened, like throughout my life to lead me here. But we are already doing things differently with our kiddos. So our kiddos are already a lot more connected with themselves than we perhaps ever were. And so, where was I going with that? The mechanics. Okay, never mind, maybe we'll come back. Okay, So that's what human design promises. That's the insight that it's giving. And it's like, hey, you need this because of we're moving into this phase outside of like somebody isn't going to tell you what to do anymore. It worked before, but it's not going to work anymore. And so when it doesn't work, don't be disappointed. Here's the way that you plug in directly to yourself. And things are going to come rapidly back to us. Our thoughts, our intentions, the yeses and the nos, when we do radically follow our design, even in the smallest ways, stuff is going to happen rapidly. Like we're going to see results almost immediately because it's like there's no more time to waste anymore. Okay. So the great place to look for what we could expect in 2027 and beyond in New Being is in retrospect, and human design's like, okay, well, let's take a look at our energetics, what we were talking about, this insight into the mechanics, which is the energy, our aura, which is 6 feet around us, and how we actually plug into life itself, into that mechanical genius zone. It's this energetics. And so when we were Neanderthal, when there was Neanderthals, right? So Neanderthals in our evolution, we're going to talk about the human evolution now. Neanderthals were the species that came before us. So follow me here, okay? There are different species because you take a Homo sapien, who we actually are, or are we? I'll get to this. And you take a Neanderthal and they can't reproduce because they're so drastically different. And yet Neanderthals preceded us. And human design gave us insight that Neanderthals were 5-centered beings. What that means is, as a 5-centered being, they were primarily navigating through their spleen. It was total pure instinct. They were moving on instinct, right? And the beings before that were 3-centered. So there's this progression, as you'll see. But it's important because before we genetically veered from Neanderthals, and there is overlap, we have evidence now that will show overlap, and actually there's another being that was in between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. There was like acting like a bridge. The name escapes me. It's like D something. But this is also very important for what's to come. But before this, there was Neanderthals, and before this mutation happened, genetically speaking, in our DNA that then create a whole nother species, energetically, what happened, what preceded that, was that from 5-centered beings, we became 7-centered beings. And this is important, so I'm going to back up a little bit, but the Yi Ching, there's 64 Yi Ching, and then there's 64 codons in our DNA. There's a drastic overlap there, and it's intentional. The kind of activations that are created between the Yi Ching, energetically speaking, when it comes to your chart, correlates with how physically we are, then how it physically expresses, right? So the Yi Ching has correlation to the genes, with the genes, then depending on what happens with the genes, how they mutate, what they do, then that shows up in our physiology, right? And mutation happens at the gene level. So when there's a change in the genetic pool, there's this veering off to a new species, like happened with Neanderthals. Are you all following me? I'm hoping I'm doing an okay job explaining this. It's my first time getting into the nitty-gritty of this, essentially. So hope that this is landing and you're following. But there's this overlap between physical changes that happen that we could see in our evolution, like things that we could physically see, how we've gone from here to here to here. And then human design is this insight of, okay, well, what was the energetic change? What was the energetic evolution that happened? So Neanderthal, there was a significant split that happened in the mutation because it was a mutation that happened within our genes, because that is a part of our growth and evolution as we're moving in this world on this growth pattern. So we went from 5-centered beings, Neanderthals, pure instinct, to the Homo sapien, which is modern-ish man, you'll see why, 7 centers, which involved more of the mind and thinking and rationalizing and whatever the contributions were that they've said. It was like cooking, eating food, like warmer food, and agriculture, like all of these different things that allowed the Neanderthal, right, to then develop this bigger neon cortex that allowed us to think more, essentially. So then you will see significant changes in the skull and then in the physiology that happened. Homo sapiens, right? So the chakra system, as we know it, as a lot of people know it, oftentimes refers to the 7 centers. And a little side note on that too is that there's centers all over in our body. They're all over. It's not limited. We're not limited to 7 centers. But the primary big ones do come through the meridian, essentially, or that's how it's generally often been thought, that they come through the meridian, right? So when you think about the chakra system and the yogic philosophy and what we've learned about the chakra system does speak about the 7 center being a Homo sapien. And this is significant because when you look at your human design chart, you can tell there's 9 center beings. There's 9 centers, right? We're 9 center beings. So there's this veering off. Homo sapiens focus on the mind, growing, thinking, evolving, eating, agriculture, just total explosion. Then in 1781, when Hersch discovered Uranus, we started to, our lifespan also started to get longer because agriculture, refrigeration, just so many things take place in the environment to then make these mutations possible within the genetics, but then also then mirror back in the energetics. Isn't it just beautiful? It's just so many layers, but that's just how it works. It all layers, it all works and informs one another. And this is significant because this is what's happening right now. And that's why like knowing this can bring you so much like relief and solace and be like, okay, like who, like there's a reason for all of this. And it's not by chance. And okay, it helps me. So Homo sapiens, 7 center beings, 1781, huge change that happened because essentially 1781 marks the beginning of 9 center beings. So these new activations between the I Ching, between the gates within the centers, create 2 new centers, which then also is the dawn of the projector aura type. So projectors weren't around until 1781. So all of these different things started happening. And so in that same way that the Neanderthal was around the 5 center being while the Homo, that veering off happened until the 7 center being kept going. And then the Neanderthal's purpose for our evolutionary, its evolutionary purpose for the human race species came to an end. 7-centered continued, right? And so in 1781, there's again this another veering off that happens until I think like 200 years. Don't quote me on this, but it is a significant amount of time that passes before the energetically Homo sapiens, as we knew it, the 7 center beings, their purpose came to an end. And then 9 center beings, we are all 9 center beings at this time. All of us are. Right? And so Ra-Uru called 9 center beings Homo sapiens in transit. We are these transitional beings. And what's really fascinating is because I thought about this, I was like, I wonder if you took, because I am an anthropologist at heart. That's what I went to college for. It was cultural, but I did a lot of, I did a archaeological dig with one of my friends who was doing her PhD in Oaxaca. And so I was helping log a lot of their findings and stuff. But so yeah, bones and all that stuff was just fascinating to me. And getting my degree, I had to like study all the different facets of anthropology, but the archaeology aspect was really fascinating. But I wonder, and I bet that if you took a skeleton from 1781 and you mapped it or brought it close to someone from 2024, it would have differences, maybe not major differences, but it would have differences. And so Homo sapien in transit we are still the same species because, and we would be able to, because we will be able to reproduce. So Neanderthal, Homo sapien are not the same species. They would not be able to reproduce. Homo sapien and sapien in transit would, even though energetically we have differences, but because as Ra named us, we are this transitional being. We are within ourselves and within the environment, we are creating the essential circumstances that will put the kind of pressure on our genetics so that in 2027, when the time is ripe, February 2027 and beyond, that this new, totally new species, totally new being can come on. And which is interesting. So that's a lot to like take in that moment. But there is an entirely new species that's going to veer off and separate from us. It's not that it doesn't mean a total extinction, like rapid extinction of us at all. No, it's going to be, as we could see from the past, a gradual moving over. But the beings are going to start to come in from February 2027 and beyond. Will be also beings that will be able to serve as these individuals who will be able to communicate with what Ra calls the Rav. It's spelled R-A-V-E, Rav. He was from Ibiza. Oh no, he was Canadian, lived in Ibiza, and so he pronounces it Rav. A lot of people call it Rave. But that's what he coined the new being. It's R-A-V-E. But before they could come onto the plane, there will be people being born that will be able to serve as these individuals who can communicate between the beings. So there's a little bit more. Are you all still here with me? This is getting a little out there, huh? I remember, can you imagine me reading about this and like studying this at the very beginning, like 7 years ago? And it was just like, whoa, like cool, but whoa. And I had so many other things I was fascinated in. And it's like, it came back full circle because recently I was getting really intrigued again. And it landed in a way that it hadn't before. So it's totally okay if this is still like you're hearing it for the first time and you don't know, it's not like, doesn't mean much. It hasn't landed yet. It's totally okay. And if you're following along, that's awesome too. But it's okay if this doesn't actually like relate yet. If it doesn't feel like it's actually, this information will continue to integrate afterwards. So allow it, trust it in that way. But okay. So in 1781, we moved to the Homo sapien in transit, what Ra is dubbed us, the nine-centered being highly evolved. The solar plexus took the bigger sphere. So we were meant to transition to a time where we are being touched and affected by the beauty and the atrocities that are happening in this world. Because when we were five-center beings, and we were like in our history, in our evolution of humans, when we were five-center beings and it was just all splenic, it was all just pure instinct, it was just totally just survival. We're here to like just survive. And then seven-center Homo sapiens, seven-center beings, it was more of like strategically, like let's strategize, let's be here for the longer haul. Like let's maybe enjoy like at some point, you know what I mean? Like enjoying maybe now, not that art wasn't around doing Neanderthals, but it wasn't as it's evolved too, right? But seven centers, it's like let's actually set roots. And there was this like laying of the land structures, but also extracting from the earth. And it was all very mental. And it was like, okay, I'm going to use my mind to get what the most I possibly can. And essentially there was a lot of wounding. So it's like, let me fill up, because when I fill up, I feel safe. and it doesn't matter what the cost, right? It's all mental. There's no emotions involved. It's like, let me take, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, like what am I left with? Where did everybody go? Um, seven-centered beings. Not to say that they were totally empathetic. You know, it just, yeah. So 1781, we're coming into this time where now we're gifted in our evolution this ability to be moved by the beauty of nature, to be moved by a little baby being born, or, you know, like the idea of that, or be moved by someone transitioning in death and passing, and being moved by the horrific things that are happening in different parts of the world, and the things that are happening to Earth herself, the extraction of resources, to we're moving from that solely mind thing to that feeling thing. And it's interesting thing, but it's interesting because it's coming, it feels like it's coming at the end of our era. Isn't that interesting? It's like we had from 1781 to 2027 to like get this right, but human design came on the plane 35 years ago because we were finally ready to learn about our mechanics, to learn about our energetics, to take that fuller responsibility. And so we are at this very pivotal time. So we are going to be moved by these things because we're meant to. And yet at the same time, again, follow your strategy and authority, like be honest about it and follow it, because some of us are here to when we respond, and if we're moved to be the way showers, or to be like, you know, in like the combat zones, or helping in that way, or spreading the word, or whatever it is, and do that. And some of us, you know what I mean? It's just different, but really follow your strategy and authority. And if you are undecided, or if you don't know, then it's okay. Just acknowledge that's where you're at, and then open yourself up, be willing to see what the role is for you to play here. And some people will receive a lot of satisfaction from being in there, and they will be aiding the suffering in a different way. So like everyone, we could all, if we have the intention to aid the suffering, it just might look very different than somebody else to you. And it's okay. Because human design is very much about having that authority, but then also acknowledging that somebody else doing it differently doesn't take away from yours, and it doesn't have to threaten the way that you do it. You can do it distinctly differently and still have the same goal, or still have the same heart or mission behind it. So in 1781, Homo sapiens in transit, the way that Ra called it, us, the nine center beings, we have this beautiful insight now, thanks to human design. We know that we're highly evolved. Like, look what we're capable of, you know, like AI and all that stuff that's happening. The solar plexus is the pivotal point, and the solar plexus itself actually is undergoing a massive transformation. That's why we're being so moved by it too. So allow yourself to be fully moved, but then anchor back into your role, right? Like, where is your energy meant to, where are you getting more energy, especially as a generator and manifesting generator? It's like, where are you? And then how to prepare. We're going to get into this really soon. Okay. And I have something really beautiful to show you. So if you could stick around, and you could watch the replay too, but we're going to definitely go over a little bit, but I want to show you something that just like, that I just saw recently. And I was like, oh my gosh, right time, right time, right moment kind of thing. And I was like, I'm showing this in this webinar because it's so beautiful. So when we move to 2027, the Rav children and beyond, they are going to be 11 center beings. We don't actually fully know, but they are going to be so drastically different. But if we look to the past, we've gained by 2 centers. Let me see. Okay. We've gained 2 centers, right, along the way. So that being said, they can have 11. There might be more, potentially 11. The circuitry is going to change. I'm actually going to learn a lot more about the Rave children, the Rav children shortly. So much more coming on this, all of this. So I'm super excited, but this being will be very different, and it will take time when that lands. We don't fully know when that 11 break thing will happen, like when energetically the first rave child will be here. We don't know, and I don't know how we'll know. But before that, there will be enough pressure and things happening in the world for this specific mutation to take place in our DNA. And it's already actually happening. There's enough, the soil is ripe for this to potentially happen. And some people will even say that life itself is already working out the next evolutionary split for us. And that could be, you could see that in with different things in life. And I don't want to really get too much into that, but it's already working itself out. But before the raves will completely multiply and take over, and like in a beautiful, like, you know, symbiote, not applicable, like agreeing off, there will be beings that will have the ability to communicate. And so the other really cool thing about 2027 and their Ra children, or the new beings coming, is that food itself will become less and less of a priority. The physical body itself is going, so there's so many like things that Ra did speak about the new being, and there's so many different things of like the hypothesis, and it's gonna get really like sci-fi here in a minute, but essentially sunlight and breathing, the air and the water that's in the air and the sunlight, like the same way that like the photosynthesis that happens with plants is going to potentially be more than enough, which is wild to think that the skin is going to be so translucent, like literally like totally new beings. Like, you know, we haven't seen this before yet, and I don't know who, if we will get to, but we are definitely playing a big role in that. We have insight into this transition, so we can move through it gracefully and harmoniously, and actually, you know, play our role. But rave individuals, they themselves will actually be very vulnerable. Their thing is when they come together in multiples. So 3 or 5, like 3 to 5 of them, when they click, when they find each other and they create this thing called the penta, which means they themselves collectively create another aura. So just to back up a little bit, anytime 2 of us humans come together, our energetically, our auras are speaking and communicating, and then we fill up different colors, right? And so we essentially together create another aura together. And so we have access then to what the other person brings to the table. And then even together, then sometimes we create even something cooler together and like stronger, yada, yada, yada. And so the penta is something that actually that happens already within families and within business partners or within businesses. Like whenever 3 or 5 of people gather together, chances are of more of these gifts plugging in like puzzle pieces to one another happens. And so then we activate something bigger than ourselves together. We have access to skills and resources and strengths and amplitudes that we don't on our own. And so that plays its role when it comes to business and family dynamics and things like that. And I absolutely love doing like chart combination readings, and it's just so fun. When it comes to the rave, the Rav, can't decide. Can you tell I can't decide which one I like better or which one is going to be the stickler? But they themselves are not going to potentially, they themselves are going to be actually quite vulnerable. They will, one of their bigger purposes and reasons will be for life and in life will be to find their 3 or 5. But once they do, it's almost like the combination that we create that sticks around for a while we're together, and then a little, it's still like kind of is or part of us until somebody leaves, you know, for a couple hours, or unless we shake it off intentionally, energetically speaking. They will like create this extra thing, and then they will potentially, that's how they will move forward in life. And as a penta, their awareness and plugging into the metaphysical realm, the information realm, the Akashic field, this field of information that surrounds us. I mean, it's sci-fi, right? But essentially everything around us has information. There's a stream of like information, subatomic particles flowing through us all the time. These beings, this future human, will have this access to the information. And while we're still on the way that Ra describes this, he still continues to be my primary teacher. The way that he describes it, he's like, look, like there's not going to be structures like walls, like to a penta. Like the penta will know that you're in the other room without seeing you. It will know your pulse rate. Like if you're sweating, like if I'm sweating, like they will just have access to information, and obviously that will serve them. And it seems scary because we've only known of people using information in ways that maybe haven't been in the most edifying way for the highest good for everybody type of thing. They might be convinced that that's what it was in the past, but it definitely, we look where we landed, right? We're at a place where there's enough stuff happening that we're actually going to be splitting off into a whole other species to survive what is actually the ramifications of, but it's also the trajectory of our human evolution at the same time too. You know what I mean? So it's like, that could be, that's a discussion all on its own, but it is fascinating to like think about and even consider just like where we are headed. And does definitely, to me at least, seem really like sci-fi. But before that even comes to like be, again, there's going to be these beings February onwards that are going to be born that will be able to communicate. So imagine like species like Neanderthal, Homo sapien, they're completely different species. There was no communication. The prefrontal cortex in Neanderthals wasn't there to be able to, I don't know how actually language. I think there would have been a language barrier there, or like sound, right? Like words and stuff like that. Like probably some communication maybe through like pictures and stuff. But in the same way with the Ra children and the future human, it will be such a drastic difference that there will be somebody potentially like serving as a communication until that human evolutionary step will totally take off and will be the only known species until who knows what from there. But it is really fascinating to be in this time. It's very special to play a role, an active role in this transformation. Okay, so how do we prepare? Spend time learning and educating yourself on what fascinates you. So like the topics that you are responding to, especially if you're a manifesting generator, and if you're a projector, you find something fascinating. Manifestor is like something that you feel very passionate about, depending on your authority, right? What you have the nudging for. And so really go down those rabbit holes, give yourself that permission, and you can always change your mind, right? So if something is all of a sudden you feel like you need to be super passionate about, but then all of a sudden you feel so drained and it's not actually life-giving, then potentially reconsider how aligned it is for you. So you can always change your mind. You're not going to mess this up. If you're engaging in the process and you're engaging in your experiment, you're not going to mess this up. Then decide but one of the other things you could do to prepare is decide what role you're here to play. And you're not deciding from the mind again. Again, like I didn't decide that this is what I was going to do. It's something that I found myself through response leading this way. And then there was something in my environment that then I responded to. And I was like, yeah, like that came to my consciousness. And I had a response of like, yes, this is the role. Like this is a part. I could feel alignment here. I could feel energy here. I could feel being on purpose in this way. And like, I have information to share about this. Like, how cool. And then I see other contemporary, you know what I mean? Big head people like in this field talk about this topic. And I'm like, okay, this information really does want to be shared. And having responded to this, even though like, it might be a much more humble, like sharing, it's still my contribution. So I am taking a chance at something too and following like courageously because it's only continued to lead me forward. And some trust, I'm just total trust. because I can see that the time is now truly. So see what you have energy for, especially for manifesting generator and generator. What energy do you have for? Is it the rebuilding? Is it the crumble? Is it 80-20%? Is it 95-5%? Again, that could change. If you're a projector, what do you find yourself guiding on those? Like, what is it that people like come to you the most? Like, what do you see yourself, like, what do you see the most? As projectors, you have this bird's eye perspective. Like, what do you see? And does that actually also light you up? Just because you see something doesn't mean that you're actually here to like then take that on. Just because somebody sees you as the expert in this field doesn't mean that that's actually something that like lights you up, you know? Like, you may have gained skills because you thought you needed to, and so now you're being recognized as that because you've gotten good at something, but doesn't mean that it's actually in alignment for you. So questioning it all. And the same thing with manifestors. It's like, what is it that you actually want to talk about? Like, what do you have this urgency to, like, this nudge or urge to go and after? And then as a reflector, what makes you feel the most? Like, what are you reflecting? And actually, I will say that reflector, if you've been reading through, if you got the email about 2027, and I have this whole like page on, and maybe I'll reshare this, but reflectors primarily will be reflecting back. So reflectors can take a bigger role in the healthcare systems. So that's like a whole nother little separate thing, but that's something as a reflector that's, if that resonates. Okay. This, if you are here and you're like, what the heck was that? I don't know if I want to play a role like that big or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just want to rest. I don't, like, I've done my share, totally understand. And young Pablo, he says this, in a society driven by capitalism and productivity, the most revolutionary act that you could do is rest. Follow your joy. Like, don't underestimate the act of following your joy, no matter what type you are, but especially if you're a generator or manifesting generator. And then if you are a non-energy being, like you're non-sacral, manifestor, projector, or reflector, or even if you're manifesting generator, if you're just like constantly doing stuff that's not in alignment either, right? Because you could be like in a numbing, busy bee kind of thing. So rest and joy. If you are going to focus on anything to prepare, those two things will cause huge revolutions in your life, because they will tweak, if you're willing, to the societal conditioning and programming around those things. So if you can have a reframe on those two things and make your life in a way that supports those two things, and those two things are at the helm of your life, joy and rest, which is like, those are big, like those are like webinar worthy each concepts, but don't mean to take it lightly. But if you feel like you've done your share and you're done, and but you're here because you're here and you want to contribute, you want to prepare, those two ways are going to radically impact your life. And then that ripple from inside of your own revolution will ripple out into the collective. That is one way that you can revolutionize within, and then therefore outside. Like, do not underestimate the power of following your joy and then resting in a world that prioritizes productivity and capitalism and extraction. Like, how much can I get out of this? Like, you're not that important to not get your rest. You know what I mean? Like, we have to reframe that. We have to reframe that. And that is another gift from human design, because it says like, that is a way that the balance of that changes, because you're no longer super taken by the mind wanting to figure out the structures and how to take to fill up, how to take to sustain, how to take to survive. It is more about then now sitting in the awe of just like being and living and being so connected into the fabric of life that life itself is just, you're seeing it play itself out. And as long as you do your strategy and your authority, which is a lot. It's the work of it's the work of everybody who's engaging with this information. Okay. Well, and then obviously you have your own like free will, and you can totally like not do anything, but if you're here, you're spiritually minded, and there's a role for you. Like there's a role that your soul chose to play in this. So, okay. You'll do that. Okay. And then, oh yes. And then the rest and the joy, when you follow your design, that naturally will come. Trust me, it will. It's wild how much more energy and vitality and life you create when you do make joy and rest at the helm of everything. And you don't have to do it perfectly to benefit either. Smallest little things will reap the biggest rewards, especially at first. Most importantly is know yourself. Know thyself. There is an epic course coming. I'm not sure when I'm going to launch it, depending on my nervous system and how it's feeling and stuff, just because there's a lot going on in life to hold. I'm there, right there with you. I'm not unaffected by it. There's crazy big hurricanes, there's war going on, we're in eclipse season, and there's election in the United States coming. There's a lot, that's a lot to hold. So I'm right there with you. So when I can hold that, there is this epic course. Ran it last year. A lot of people did it, and there's a little bit more bonuses, but essentially it will be everything that's in color in your chart, like your aptitudes, your strengths, your gifts, your talents, all of that is laid out so that you can know yourself, because when you do know yourself, you could double down on those things and really live out your life in a way that feels fulfilling, meaningful, on purpose, and be really connected to your role. So watch out for that. That's coming. I'll definitely email more about that. But I wanted to leave you with this. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen with you, and then I'll take some questions afterwards. Okay, so just a little bit of this. This showed up in my feed because I followed, I think I followed him, or I've done something, but Zach Bush, he is a doctor, MD, but he also works with the soil. And so he's really big about rejuvenating soil so that it has its original nutrients, so that we can actually feed it and into like life and stuff like that. And so he's really, he does some really cool stuff, but he inspired this woman to write. And so some of the stuff that she says, I've heard him say before, and it was just really encouraging. So how can you prepare? When I had total goosebumps when I saw this reel on Instagram, because it spoke directly to what I was going to be talking about today. And it is this move from the mind to the feeling, so that it can move us towards aligned action. So without further ado, and then we're going to end on that, okay? Share screen. There you go. Press play. Oh, then you
the rising tides force millions.
Okay.
Too much sun will melt the snow. That rising tides force millions to go. That we're already watching a mass migration reality show. AI is on the rise, accelerating our possible demise, or will it become humanity's greatest prize? Well, while we figure that out, bloodshed happens on tiny screens before our eyes. We just can't seem to find the truth in forests of lies. Now, we all know these are realities, doing what we can to avoid these tragedies, but do we know why? What if all the challenges we face today are simply symptoms of a species gone astray? Perhaps just 5 simple words can illuminate where we lost our way. I think, therefore I am. 5 simple words that have gone too far, for thinking we are creatures who only think has made the world bizarre. So, what does thinking have to do with ice cap sinking? I mean, how does it correlate with impending extinction? Well, when all we do is think, we forget to feel. When we forget to feel, consequences become less real. How would it be possible to bludgeon the baby seal if we actually let penetrate its mother's anguished squeal? How would it be possible to drop bombs on sacred land if we had come to love each grain of stone and sand, if we had shaken each local person's hand? How would it be possible to pollute our only earth if we truly honored she's the one who enabled all of our birth? An open heart makes such things impossible. So we escape to the mind. We disconnect our capacity to be kind. We close our hearts and pretend to be blind, yet the hands of time cannot rewind. The only way out is through. And surprise, surprise, the answer you've been looking for exists inside of you. You have the power to create a better tomorrow. But will you dare to stop and feel your endless sorrow? Will we dare to feel the pain, the bliss of melting into nature's kiss, of cracking open to meet the endless abyss, of choosing to care about more than ourselves? It's time to write a different kind of song, and together choose 5 new words to build a more beautiful world upon. I'll give you some examples. I breathe, therefore I prosper. I grieve, therefore I love. I feel, therefore I exist. Let these words shape your perspective, and in turn, let them heal our collective. From head to heart requires a courageous leap. Will you be so brave and dare to go deep? As a world built on thinking swiftly crumbles to dust, we now require leaders daring to trust that everything we see outside only mirrors what's right here. Our willingness to feel is the final frontier.
Stop the share. Woo. It, like, made me tear up. It was. Wait.
We all know
Oh, more
that too much
point.
sun will melt the snow.
Okay, stop. I don't know if you heard it, but it was coming back on my screen. It's just such a it's such a beautiful, like, so eloquently said, this leap from the head to the heart. And we, as a species, have led with the mind so much, and there is this propensity towards the feeling, and we're really finding our way through the leap from that to here, and what does that mean for us? And I think every single one of us will navigate it differently. And I think one of the bigger things is truly just having those words penetrate you, thinking about that and being moved in a way that maybe um, challenges what you thought of security before. But that does build a completely different tomorrow for us. Lindsay, can you share that? Beautiful. Yes, I actually, that's a great idea. I'll do that with the replay. That was really beautiful. And it's interesting because as a non-emotional, so my solar plexus is uncolored, there is this possibility of me feeling very deeply, but because my center is completely uncolored too, like I can be super ice cold and cool, which has helped me. in many different ways, but it's an interesting thing to navigate because the feelings that I am feeling, I am amplifying from around me and I am letting them move me, but it's not a place for me to like move from, if that makes sense. According to my design is like in the moment action. That's what I can trust. And that's why knowing yourself is so important. But allowing yourself to be moved. I am often moved by nature and my daughter and just giving yourself permission to feel the vastness of that joy, that love, that rest that comes from actually taking and being in the moment versus always being and moving. Um, and joy takes an incredible amount of bravery to feel because it's one of the hardest emotions to feel. Truly, it really is, because with that comes a capacity for it's vulnerable to feel that, right? Because you're opening yourself up for a bigger part. It's just interesting. So it's such a beautiful gift. If you have your solar plexus and it's colored in and it's your authority, you are like, the solar plexus is currently a motor that's processing emotion. So you're here to ride these waves and they're here to inform, like the overall feeling over something is informing you around your next steps. And when you're coming cool collected, like how, like that's when you make your decisions. But this solar plexus is transforming into an awareness center. So it's no longer going to be the solely processing motor, like energy giving center anymore. It's totally transforming. But you have this gift that you bring to the table of this like feeling. So don't ever shy away the heavy or the light. None of those. Like you're here to really, in humanity's history, like you are the physical vehicle by which vehicle vessel essentially by which these emotions are being transmuted to the rest of us to actually connect us to the part of us that makes us human, not just the mind. So it's an interesting role that you play, because as an emotional being, because there is this learning and sharing of and holding space within yourself for the full spectrum. And when you let yourself do that, that ripples out for the rest of us too. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? I'm going to answer this one. How does this affect an open head crown who benefits from external influence? So that's a great question. When you have an open crown and ajna, well, see, the open crown benefits from the inspiration that comes from others. And so it's meant to be that you get yourself out there to find, like, if you're ever like in a rut or a stump or like feeling like lethargic or not wanting to maybe like work out or something, like the inspiration does come from outside, or like scrolling or looking at videos. So looking at that, but it's not influence in the way that somebody else would direct your life big decisions, if that makes sense anymore. Like you would, if you would see something external in your life that potentially was inspiring to you, that you were letting in, you would filter that through your emotional authority first. I just know that you're emotional authority card, but you would, anybody else, you would filter that through your authority essentially. So it's a great question, because our open centers are centers that give us information that we could use. So if you are dealing with other people, you could use that, especially as an open ajna of like, oh, I'm like getting intel on what you're thinking, or the inspiration, but essentially those are not informing your decisions, whether it's small or big ones. The smaller ones doesn't really matter so much, but when it comes to the bigger ones, like if you're finding you're inspired by somebody else doing something, having you run through your emotional authority first, because it's cool, because as a manifesting generator, you are responding, right? And then you're being filled in those centers. But again, they're not essentially, they never were you. You know what I mean? It's just information that comes in. Yeah. But you're right, you benefit in the way that it could, but no, you said it right. Like you benefit because it can get you up, but you are then in control of how you use it. So then you could be intentional about like consciously, I'm gonna go for inspiration, you know? Or I'm going to go, because the open ajna is interesting because you will actually be more you actually use it more correctly when you're using actually less, and then like when you notice the worry that comes in is actually not your own, like in the open ajna. The crown and the influence, when it comes to inspiration, as long as it's like a light inspiration to like get you going into the direction that you've been wanting to go, totally, you know. But yeah, like that's a really good question, because we do get influenced by our white centers, but the influential era is completely ending. And I think a lot of you may have even been aware, especially if you are like on TikTok, but like the whole celebrity blackout, or the influencers losing a ton of like people following them because it no longer resonates. That's what I mean about that crumbling. It doesn't mean that you can't follow those people or can't be influenced by what they're doing, because if they're in your sphere and you've already responded to them and they're doing something and you're like, oh yes, like this resonates, and cool, let that like inform. But when it comes to like it's just not going to be the same way anymore. Like where influencers used to be like, buy this because this is cool. You know what I mean? It just doesn't work like that. People are no longer like um and you know what's actually interesting was what you bring up, Karin, like this idea of, because I have influential 31 is my biggest, you know, gift. And so it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's interesting because then I've had a funny, there are some people like me who can really double down on that gift and then use it in a way that is for the highest good of everybody. Like Richard Rudd has a 31 and he has a way of like communicating and using language to manipulate, but then he's also very open about how he like finagles people in. But he has like he has lightness about it, but he's also so integrated with that part. I'm still very much integrating that part, because there is this like, wait, influence, but you know, it's such an interesting conversation. It's a good conversation. Yeah, it's a good topic. But I feel like you understand, like you get the yeah, yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. Let me know if there are any questions, maybe in the email then. Sometimes they come in that way, but this was it was awesome. This was great. I love talking about this topic, and there will be more. There's going to be a podcast for sure about 2027 in 2025. I'm super excited. There's just so much that wants to come through me about this topic. And I feel like I could be very helpful in bringing people together, just sharing helpful information as we move through these times. Um, so many thoughts, ahas, thank you. Oh yeah, you're so welcome. Yeah, I feel the same way when I've been, revisiting and like doubling down. It's like more advanced stuff, but we're here. It's like 2 years away, and feeling the intensity of the energy happening, it can give a little bit more context to it. So it's always been helpful for me. So thank you for being here, and you will see this, you have the replay, and yeah, I'll see you around. Bye, everybody.